I don't know the August reference. I know back to September.
I don't listen to Taylor Swift.
I listened to Folklore all the way through like one time, and I said, I don't think it's got the juice.
No. Oh, that's so... Folklore was what brought me back to Taylor Swift.
Scott is appalled.
Like, I had, like, put her away, was like, oh, sure, I liked, the pop album stuff. But, like, I was like, oh, she's been a folk writer this whole time. This is not funny if you don't know August, the song. I was like, I can see us watching the tally August 5th at 8. Drop your vote off in time. Hans, do you know it? Does our producer know?
Oh, wow.
All right,
So
it's time
brave.
for Sound Politics. Let's go.
It's so brave of you to sing.
This is Sound Politics. I'm Scott Greenstone.
And I'm Libby Denkmann.
And if your ballot was sitting on your counter waiting to be turned in, it's expired, like an avocado in the summer heat on
That's
my
expensive, by the way.
Yeah.
Losing an avocado.
counter. Or 5.
Too late even for guacamole. Local results are coming in. Progressive challengers, they're probably celebrating with some guac and maybe some margaritas. These progressive challengers really looked strong against moderate incumbents in Seattle City Hall. They are looking to be well-positioned to win in November. Seattle's Republican city attorney seems especially on the back foot, maybe something a little stronger for her. But the council president and the mayor should also not be comfortable based on these numbers.
And out in the suburbs, Democrats do not seem to be taking a beating for raising taxes this year. But, at least not yet, they have got one tough fight forming across the water.
All that is coming up today on Sound Politics, and we're joined by politics editor Cat Smith again to talk about all of it. Hey, Cat.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. So we want to get into who people voted for, but first let's talk about how people were feeling about voting in general. How many people actually participated this time around? Scott, what did it look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's summer, it's vacation time. It's an off year, right? Or an odd year, I should say. Someone told me not to say off year because there are no off years for elections, but it's an odd year. The big parties are not spending a ton of money to get their voters out. So we are looking at around a third, probably. It could be a little bit higher in King County, but not great. And we got a listener question about this that I thought was interesting. So Craig A. Jones in Renton looked at this, quote, dismal turnout, is what he called it, in this primary, and he had this question. Primaries used to be held in September after Labor Day.
Yeah.
When most were back from summer vacations. When they were moved to August, we started to see those participation numbers fall. So why the change in dates when it's obvious that if you want an active electorate, you should make it more convenient than less? And Kat, you said in our chat that there were logistical reasons for the August move. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, I mean, people have been wondering, like Craig, about this since 2007 when state lawmakers changed the dates of the primary elections to late August. And then in 2011, they moved it back more to early August, where we have it now. Basically, there's a giant invisible Jenga tower. It's a Jenga tower of scheduling, and it would make your head spin if you could see it. Printing schedules, long-distance mailing, avoiding conflicts with the legislative session in the spring, rules around when candidates can start fundraising. There are federal rules overlapping some of this stuff. If you start pulling the pieces out of the Jenga tower, the whole thing starts looking like it'll collapse. So Melissa Santos over at Axios wrote a really nice explainer back in July. I took a look at it, and I was like, this is great. It lays everything out really nicely. And she says, Shout out Melissa. Later primary voting starts to actually bump up against deadlines to print and prepare general election ballots and get them sent to people living abroad and military members serving overseas. And then earlier voting would start to bump up against the May filing deadline for candidates and rules around getting voter pamphlets printed in June. And in years like this year, when there's an extra long legislative session that ends in April, state lawmakers can't fundraise for their campaigns during the session. So Jenga tower, you can't see it, but it's there and it's teetering at all times.
So thank you for the question, Craig. Listeners, be like Craig. Ask us questions. Soundpolitics at KUOW.org. Now, enough of the existential questions about, why we vote now. Why are we here? What are we doing on this earth? Let's get into the details, starting with Seattle City Hall, which I will leave you to to talk about because, as I say every time Seattle comes up, my girlfriend works for the mayor, so take it away. This is a total surprise.
This is our
First
new drop.
Icing. No.
Every time you have to disclose, I feel like we need to ask, who needs a heart when a heart can be broken, Scott? But you know what can't be broken is your love of political reporting.
So true. This is why we had in the script pause for reasons.
Okay, bye, Scott.
Bye,
We'll see you
Scott.
soon. Yeah.
All right, now that he's gone.
Woo. Anytime we can pause for Tina, I believe we should pause for Tina Turner.
Every time Scott leaves the room, we should just play that song. Play him out.
Yeah. Okay, so Kat, when it comes to these city elections, I'm assuming folks who work at City Hall came in after Tuesday with a little bit of a hangover. Your hangover from covering this might still be lingering. How are you feeling?
It's not great. I dragged my carcass in here a few minutes late today. I'm not going to lie.
Fair. Very fair.
I think if you work in City Hall, your election hangover is gnarly. I think Mayor Harrell, for example, is he's looking likely to move on to the general election, but he's going to have to start campaigning hard to hang on to this office. His progressive populist challenger, Katie Wilson, is ahead of him by more than 4 points after yesterday's ballot drop. In Seattle, we tend to see later votes break for progressives, so I am expecting Katie Wilson to keep picking up votes in the next few days, widening that gap as counting wraps up. When November comes around, these two will face off again, Harrell and Wilson, and we'll see how much ground Harrell can make up between now and then. He's going to start trying hard now to convince people how his more moderate policies have been good for the city over the last 4 years. That's going to be his pitch. I'll note here that the first time Harrell ran for mayor in 2021, he also underperformed in the primary. He was only a point or two ahead in that primary. It looked really tight. Then he later went on to crush his opponent in the general.
Yeah. Do you think at the start of this year, the mayor expected to be in the fight of his political life at this point?
I mean, what he told us yesterday that he was like, well, we knew this was going to be a tough race. I don't know if he expected it.
I don't know if he's been running like that. But,
No.
My impression, too, in early 2025 was even a lot of progressives were kind of thinking, well, he's going to cruise, right? He wrapped up a bunch of labor endorsements. He wrapped up endorsements from progressives like Pramila Jayapal.
Mm-hmm.
But then enter Katie Wilson, and it's been, a different kind of race since then. Harrell, back in 2021, had the luxury of running against a council president, Lorena Gonzalez, who had, said she was going to support defunding the police by 50% in Seattle. Wilson, by contrast, I see a progressive who has figured out how to talk about public safety without scaring the crap out of the median voter, right? Like 911 response time, something she brought up in our interview, talking about police overtime, expanding care teams. So talking about alternatives to policing in addition to proper staffing of the police department. And she even connects homelessness and public safety. Like, she's been talking a lot about the urgency of the moment. And when she talks about crime rates spiking 2022, 2023, she blames Harrell for not moving fast enough on homelessness and says that's a reason that Seattle lagged some of the declining crime rates nationwide. I have to say, one of the times that I thought to myself Wilson might actually make this was a race was when young people in my life brought me a TikTok, which is the only way I see TikToks. And that was her pizza slice video.
I saw that
Did
one
you
too.
see it?
Yeah, that not as perfect as a Zoran Mamdani.
No, she does not
video.
have the riz of a Zoran Mamdani.
But she was holding a pizza slice on Capitol Hill being like, this pizza is so expensive. And points to you. It is expensive to buy a slice of pizza in Seattle. It is.
Yeah, affordability. Now, you do see Bruce Harrell moving on things like the B&O tax restructure, making that a little bit tougher on big businesses, a little bit easier on smaller businesses. He's announced that there's going to be some tiny home villages opening this fall. But Katie Wilson would say too little, too late.
Yeah. So when we talked to his campaign, we talked to Mayor Harrell's campaign yesterday about the results so far, the claws were already coming out for Katie Wilson. So I think we're going to see, if the things could get nasty coming up to November. Harrell said that Wilson has, quote, a thin resume and a history of fringe politics. And that's a reference to her previous support for socialist Shama Sawant and her 2020 support for the idea of defunding the police, an idea she sort of moved away from now.
I would think that Bruce Harrell would love to see people think Shama Sawant when they see Katie Wilson on the ballot in the fall.
Yeah, something easy. And then, meanwhile, Wilson also told us that the city is ready to move on from Harrell after 4 years, that the city is unaffordable, homelessness is out of control, and so I think we're in for a nasty fight.
Okay, since we're already at City Hall, we're going to walk downstairs, and then we're going to go across the street. Just look both ways, Kat, before we go out there, because it can be a little dicey.
Dodge the traffic.
We're going to head over to the city attorney's office. We have a pretty good idea at this point who is going on. That is incumbent Ann Davison, but she doesn't have reason for a lot of optimism because Erica Evans, who worked in the city attorney's office for Pete Holmes before going to the Justice Department, she is looking really strong here. Kat, what are you seeing in this race?
Yeah, this one's going to be tough for Ann Davison. Oh, she is a Republican. This position is nonpartisan, but she is a Republican. It looks like she is in trouble, and her party affiliation has been kind of a big deal in this race. Right now, her progressive challenger, Erica Evans, has 53% of the vote, and Davison's got only 36%.
And those margins, they tend to move more progressive as more ballots come in.
Right. So Davison's probably going to be down more in the next few days. Again, they're both moving on to the general, so they're going to face off again. But Davison's down so much, and she did tell us yesterday that she's disappointed with these results. And she was elected in 2021, same as Bruce Harrell, and she's pushed policies like stepping up prosecutions of repeat offenders and more punitive measures for people who do drugs in public. But she's also sued the Trump administration and joined lawsuits with other cities against Trump policies. So even though she is a Republican and she's told us that the position of city attorney is nonpartisan, she doesn't want to make this an issue, that party doesn't matter in this race, she'd rather focus on local issues. Her opponent, Erica Evans, has been hitting her hard for not coming out against Trump harder. She sent us a message this morning actually talking about that.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of voters in Seattle right now living in Trump 2.0 have generosity in their hearts to see the nuance between a local Republican and a national Republican. And we see that reflected here in the vote. And I think in a lot of ways, the fact that Davison is even in the position she's in, again, goes back to 2021 when progressive politics were just in a very different place. And you had an abolitionist running against her who was talking about, burning things down, tearing the justice, system down and building something new. This was an unusual, strange time. There's also now, for Davison, not a good way for her to claim victory for falling crime rates when we do see the nationwide trends. And, ending the city's participation in community court. Well, Davison would argue she expanded these other kinds of diversion programs for people who are struggling, especially with drug addiction, through nonprofits. That got a lot of headlines and had a lot of progressives very upset. These are ways in which I don't think Davison made any extra inroads with the left during her time in office, despite saying she, is focused on local issues, not a national Republican.
Yeah. And I think, so it may bear out that her election could have just been a fluke when given the choice between an abolitionist and a moderate Republican. Seattle voters decided they'd rather go with the moderate Republican. And this time around, there's a more standard Seattle progressive running against Davison.
With experience as a prosecutor.
Exactly.
Erica Evans.
Erica Evans worked in the Seattle Attorney's Office, like you mentioned, for a bit before Davison, and then she worked as a U.S. attorney, and she ended up leaving because of Trump. She's trying to make Trump a big issue in this race, and she helped prosecute some of the January 6th Capitol rioters, and she says it's a disgrace that Davison is a Republican in this office. And on primary night, she told the Seattle Times that she thinks that Seattle is ready for a change this November.
Okay, heading back across the street, back to council chambers. What's up next, Kat?
We're waiting around with all the people here for public comment to check out 2 large seats that are up for grabs.
Public comment, something that's going to be an issue in these races, yeah.
Yes, the city's 2 at-large seats are up for grabs, and in those races, both incumbents will make it into the general. But the margins in those races are very different. Libby, let's talk about some of the trends that you're watching in those races.
Yeah, clearly, Dion Foster, who is the nonprofit director and social work educator who's challenging City Council President Sarah Nelson in District 9, the citywide seat, is cruising through and looks in a very good position against Nelson in November. Nelson is at 38% of the vote right now to Foster's 56%.
Ouch.
And in a lot of the ways, this feels like a referendum on the city council's performance since the 2021 and 2023 moderate wave elections. That was seen as this rejection of progressive candidates and defund the police. Voters since then have really watched moderates in city council struggle to fulfill some of their promises about cleaning up the streets, improving crime, addressing homelessness.
And in part of that was because of the level of experience that a lot of these candidates brought with them to City Hall.
Yeah, you watched city council in 2024 pass the fewest number of council-generated bills on record and in memory. They stumbled big when they tried to gut the gig worker pay law. They tried to allow some businesses to delay raising the minimum wage. Oh, yeah. None of this stuff made them look good. It also made them look ineffective and inexperienced. And just as a retail politician, I think Sarah Nelson has struggled. Her compassion for people, especially struggling with addiction, which she's talked about her own journey in sobriety, is very real. She's fought to carve out money for treatment, and at the same time, I don't know that people connect her with that so much as some of the things that grabbed headlines, like shutting down public comment or the soap and soda zones, which are seen as punitive by the far left and not very effective, more performative. And
soap and soda are those geographic areas of the city where if you have a drug or a prostitution conviction, you're not supposed to enter those zones where that type of activity is supposed to take place.
Yeah, and I don't know that we even need to talk much about Alexis Mercedes Rink, who is running away.
She's crushing
with
it.
Her district, 77% of the vote. She had a huge, message sent by voters in her special election in 2024, and she's just continuing to dominate at this point.
Yeah.
Big picture before we move on from these city hall elections, I do think that you can make that argument that this is about progressives finding their voice and finding their message. The 2021-2023 wave, when you had several members of city council come in on a moderate promise to, increase police hiring, improve public safety, that had its moment. But when you start at the timeline of Alexis Mercedes Rink in 24, winning her special election with a big number of votes, and then you see the social housing vote that happened in February, the left is roaring back, and the left has found its way to talk about these issues without freaking people out.
All right, Libby, so we're done with downtown Seattle. It's in our rearview mirror. Get in the car. We're on our way. We're going to pick up Scott. Scott, welcome back.
Oh, hey, hi.
Oh, my God. Hi, Scott.
Hi. Didn't see you there.
Yeah, but first, we got to take a quick break. Is that right? And we'll be back in a moment. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, we brought you back just to throw us to break. Good job.
Oh, great.
Thanks.
Bye.
Welcome back to Sound Politics. We're recapping the primary election in the Seattle area in King County. I'm Libby Denkmann. Cat Smith is with us, KUOW politics editor. And oh, hey, Scott. Welcome back.
Hey, I'm back. Scott Greenstone here. Cat Smith, you're driving the car. Where are we going?
We are heading to Boeing Field, King County government property, where we will get inside one of those little planes and we're lifting off. It's a beautiful day. You can see all the way from Shoreline to Federal Way. And if you look to your east, you'll see all the way to Skycomish. Yes, we are seeing the entirety of King County. And this county will have a new executive this year. Scott, you've been following this race. What is that looking like?
Yeah. So that race is another real win for progressives, at least in the primary. And again, this is the primary. The general election voters could feel different, but it's a good, indication of how progressives are doing. In the county executive race, King County Council member Gurmai Zahalai, who represents South King County, look, you can see it down there. He has a strong lead over a crowded field. So this is so county executive, right, and the county government runs the metro buses, the sheriff, the county jail. Zahalai, once upon a time, called for closing the youth jail. He flipped on that stance last year. I think it's another good example of what you're talking about. Progressives kind of moderating on public safety. So he has also pushed the state to let the county raise property taxes because of the county's dire budget situation. Another example of taxes coming up and just in these races. The number 2 in this race, pretty far behind him, last time I checked it was around 10 points, is another county council member who represents the east side, Claudia Balducci. is kind of known for getting the light rail expanded to the east side. She also ran the county jail for 3 years, so she is a little bit to Zahalai's right. And in November, she could pick up votes from the Republican candidate and more conservative Democrats and maybe end up winning.
Although their voting record is really similar. I
Yeah.
mean, the two of them, I think the thing I heard from voters was it was difficult to tell them apart on issues. Balducci, I have to say, really emphasizing experience in this race. Zahalai relying on a really compelling life story,
right.
coming to the U.S. at the age of 3 as a refugee at a time when immigrants are under assault in the U.S. He really has a strong case for being a leader during the Trump administration and protecting immigrants. Can I just say on light rail, quick sidebar?
Okay.
Balducci running on this right now. I am from her council district originally, grew up in Redmond, and seeing trains running on the east side is really fun. But the whole point is to get across the lake.
And it's not going to get there before the election.
I mean, the bad rail ties, pulling those off the I-90 bridge, like Eastsiders remember this and they are frustrated by it. So it's rough because I think she had a really good timeline and unfortunately, some engineering challenges has changed the calculus for her.
Okay, but we are not taking a train. We're flying.
I had to do my rant. I'm
right?
sorry.
Yeah, the train rant. Can we make a change to the flight plan? Because I want to fly southeast from downtown. I don't know what the flight plan was.
Sure, yeah,
or
we
who's
had
driving.
one of those.
He's going rogue. He's going rogue.
So I want to point out some stuff as we, are heading over South Seattle, South King County. There are some open seats down here that you can find results for on our website at KUOW.org. We don't have time to get into those, but I just want to mention here that as we get out of Seattle, you notice that stranger-endorsed candidates are not doing as well. Progressives are maybe not doing as well. But I want to take us out of the county, take us out of the city, take us out of the local elections, and talk about some state legislative elections, some Democrats and Republicans stuff. Let's get into the partisan things.
Okay, so some Democrats, Scott, are trying to hold on to seats in the state legislature. You've been reporting on this effort. What does it look like?
Okay. Thinking back, right, to the legislative session, Governor Ferguson signed the Democrats' budget into law with lots of little tax hikes just a few months ago. And the question coming into this election was, were voters going to feel sore at Democrats for it? And again, this is a primary, right? These are kind of like party faithful. But it seems like the answer that we're flying over right now, right, as we head into Southeast King County, is not. Over there on the east side where we were just talking about, Senator Vandana Slatter is sitting so pretty with nearly 60% of the vote. That over there is one of a couple intra-party fights that we have talked about on the show before.
A lot of money in that race.
A lot of money, but, for all that money, the challenger, a moderate Democrat and Slatter's colleague in the House in that same district, Amy Wallen, is not doing nearly as well. Slatter, as a note, voted for the taxes. Wallen voted against them. They're both Democrats.
And that race started with a lot of drama because even the fact that Vandana Slatter is in that seat, both of them were up for the vacancy, but the Democratic Party chose Slatter, and Wallen was like, let's put it to the voters.
That's right. And the voters, at least the primary voters, say, no, we like her too. But they will both go on to the general. So then, those voters get their say. Okay, we're now passing over Burien, SeaTac, Des Moines, and Kent. And the Democrat here, similar thing. He was appointed. He's not looking as hot. He does not have as much experience. Representative Edwin Obras is in the 40s. His main challenger is the mayor of Burien, Kevin Schilling, also a Democrat, kind of a conservative
Real
one.
maverick, Kevin Schilling.
That is true. And Kevin is behind, but the question is, there's a Republican trailing with around a quarter of the vote. Does Schilling pick up those Republican votes? Because he has pushed some controversial laws criminalizing camping outside in Burien when there aren't very many indoor shelter spaces. That is kind of a common story in South King County. But yeah, the question is, do Republicans switch to Schilling? If so, he wins.
Speaking of Republicans, Scott, weren't there some other legislative seats that had competitive conservative challenges in there? Are those potential seats that the GOP could pick up?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let me direct your attention out your left window. Is this metaphor going?
Are we still flying?
We're still flying.
How did Scott get a pilot's license?
When he left the room.
Is this a barefoot bandit situation?
Yes, that's right. Good reference.
Thank you.
So over in Issaquah, if I may direct your attention, Issaquah, Enumclaw, Snoqualmie Valley direction, the 5th district has Democratic Senator Victoria Hunt sitting in a somewhat comfortable spot at over half, which we tend to associate with an incumbent winning re-election, or in this case, retainment, if you'd like to be technical. She's being retained, not reelected, because she was also appointed to this seat.
A lot of appointments
earlier this year.
Yeah.
Go back to our Democratic Dominoes episode if you want to learn more about that. She was
Musical
appointed to
chairs.
this seat after the death of Senator Bill Ramos earlier this year. Hunt is facing probably competitive Democrat, but it may not be as competitive as Republicans would like because, again, Hunt is sitting in a fairly comfortable place. We'll see, how that election shakes out. The really, really tight one that I think you all are going to want to see is I want to direct your attention to the windows on the right, out over the Sound, to the Kitsap Peninsula, Bremerton, Port Orchard, Gig Harbor.
Oh, I see a whale.
This is another domino, right, that fell. Congresswoman Emily Randall's old seat. She left to go to Congress, right, and her seat is open in the state legislature. This is the one that Democrats, I assume, are going to be furrowing their brows about, right? So even though the appointed Senator, Democrat Deb Krishnadasan, did not vote for the tax increases, attack ads have definitely sought to tie her to those tax increases because she didn't vote for the Republican proposed budget that wouldn't have raised taxes. And so she's facing Republican Michelle Caldier. And on election night, Caldier was ahead. Then she fell behind. Those two are neck and neck. That is going to be a real fight in November because Caldier is popular, even though she's been involved in some scandals and even stopped caucusing with the Republicans at one point.
Okay, Scott, so it looks like, at least on the east side and in the southwest part of the county, you have incumbents who were appointed, and they're doing okay despite an anti-incumbency mood in, say, city elections. They are looking good in the state legislature, but now out on the peninsula, that's where you might see that backlash to higher taxes voted in by legislators in Olympia having an effect and maybe a pickup for Republicans.
Possibly. That's one of those few split districts. The one I was just talking about down in Issaquah and Enumclaw, that used to be, but is now more leaning Democrat.
Okay, let's land this plane. Do you know how to land the plane?
Oh, I should have asked. Does anyone here know how to land the plane?
You should have probably studied that one.
Parachutes. This is why they make parachutes.
One big takeaway for everybody from this primary election. Kat, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think as we've been talking a lot, I've been thinking about a lot of these incumbents are facing these serious challengers. And their pitch to voters, right, is, are you better off now than you were when you elected me? And what we're looking at right now is a lot of voters are saying, no, I don't feel like I'm better off. I'm not satisfied with your leadership. I've gotten really obsessed with the New York City mayoral race and the rise of Zohran Mamdani. And I'm just kind of wondering if this summer is going to be, mainstreaming of progressive populism. And, Trump's tariffs are taking effect and prices everywhere are going to go up. These aren't necessarily things that our local leaders have control over. But I'm wondering if people are going to just start vote. Like, my life is objectively harder. My dollar goes less far. I'm going to take it out on, who is on my ballot.
Yeah. Mamdani is talking a lot about groceries.
Yep.
And Katie Wilson's talking about pizza.
Yep.
It does sound like Seattle voters are maybe a little less healthy than New York voters in that case, but
And we have worse pizza.
Yeah, not true. I would argue not true, but yeah, we're talking about pizza instead of New York is like so goofy.
Scott, your takeaways from this primary?
It's funny that you have this anti-incumbent situation going on in Seattle, and I think it's not just there, right? So in Everett. I'm going to land the plane in Everett at Payne Field. We talked about Everett last week. Mayor Cassie Franklin got a rep as a tough on homelessness mayor, and she is really in trouble. I just want to mention she was at 35% on election night behind challenger Scott Murphy. She will make it through. There's another one in Linwood, controversial council member Josh Binda, who got in hot water over some ethics violations at City Hall. He might get primaried. He might not even make it through. He was neck and neck for second place the last time I checked. So those races are technically nonpartisan. When you get into the partisan races, incumbent Democrats, tend to be doing fine. Of course, they are more often the more progressive ones from their challengers. I think this is all a similar story to 2017 in some ways. Trump comes in, the county, especially King County, swings the other way. And I also just think that you are right. People in the cities do feel as if they are not better off, as if things are too expensive. And I mean, I feel that too, as far as the expensiveness goes.
For me, I think we're watching the transition of progressives from police abolitionist, eat the rich progressives to tax the rich, eat affordable pizza. It's like more stuff that the average voter can relate to. I do wonder how much outside money will come into this election season before November. We did see in the primary outside spending favoring Bruce Harrell versus Katie Wilson. Will there be bigger union money coming in on Wilson's behalf? Will there be bigger real estate business money coming in on Harrell's behalf, or even for Sarah Nelson going into the fall? And my final question for you is, since this fiery progressive rhetoric seems to have cooled off and a more wonky policy nerd abundance style talk seems to be on the ascendance here, do we have to pass the torch from most influential political endorsements in city elections from the stranger to the urbanist?
Damn.
Is that time? I mean, they got the King County endorsement wrong. They endorsed Balducci over Gurmai Zahalai, but we'll see in the November, results if that bears out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in my DMs would love that, but I don't know if that reflects the average voter. The average voter is not super engaged, even in Seattle. They do care about the bread and butter stuff that Katie Wilson is talking about right now. It's all, ahead, right? Now is when the real election takes place, because especially in these nonpartisan races, people don't really know. They might be generally upset with incumbents, but they don't really know what their challengers stand for yet. And so when you see the negative attack ads come in, that's when people make the real decision.
So the real race starts now.
That's it for Sound Politics today. Our show is produced by Hans Anderson. Our editor and co-host today is Catharine Smith. I'm Libby Denkmann.
And I'm Scott Greenstone. This show is only possible because of your support. Please consider a donation to keep us going at KUOW.org/politics. See you next week.
Thank you.